Okay, perfect. So, hai fatto i piedi? Yes?
Silvia, numero? Chiara Passani.
Yes. And now I'm reading your motion. Environmental movements should focus more on educating individual citizens rather than pressing governments and companies. Okay? Perfectly. I have nothing to say anymore. Something to say from you? Okay? There we go. Ready? Okay. So, Francesco Paolo Barbacane, the first speaker from the opposition team, please take the floor. Thank you.
And I'll start my timer in 3, 2, 1. As Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci said, odio gli indifferenti. This means that without educating, we ignore, and when we ignore, we don't care. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Francesco Paolo Barbacane, the first speaker of proposition team. Now, at first, I'll read the motion again, so to be clear. Environmental movements should focus more on educating individual citizens rather than pressuring governments and companies. I shall now provide you with our definitions. An environmental movement is a series of organized people and activities who work to preserve our environment from pollution and other threats. To educate too, this is clearly extremely important, is to give someone information on something, creating what is called consciousness. Citizens are, and I quote dictionary, a person who legally belongs to a country and has the rights and protection of that specific country. A government, on the other hand, is a group of people who control and make decisions for a country, state, etc. Ultimately, a company is a business organization that makes, buys or sells goods or provides services in exchange for money. Why is educating far more important than pressuring companies and governments right now? Because what we lack today is environmental class consciousness. And these are the three main words that summarize our team life. And I'll say them again. Environmental class consciousness. We'll bring today a model to explain how we will make this class consciousness possible through educating people with environmental movements. And then we will effectively reason how educating people benefits both environmental movements, it benefits citizens, indirectly governments, and ultimately it benefits the environment itself. First thing first, our model. We all know that education is key in our world. And the question might be simple. What is class consciousness? Well, to define class is, a class is a broad group of people who have the same social economic interests and share the same place in the social hierarchical structure. Class consciousness is the level of being aware of someone to be in that specific class and to understand their social economic interests. And for the purposes of the motion, we can all agree that our interest is to preserve the environment. And to do so, we have a model which is based, of course, on educating people rather than firstly pressuring governments and companies. And why is that? Educating creates, of course, class consciousness. giving information on something creates more in-depth a look on something and creates consciousness. It helps people understand their role and position in society. This will be done in schools, universities, workplaces, places of gathering. This class consciousness brings, when people are going to elect their representatives, is going to make these voted representatives better, because the people who vote for them are betterly educated and know what they want. They know their interests. Better representatives then work for a better government, create a better government which will far more effectively regulate companies. And this is why class consciousness is the basis of an effective fight against climate change and an effective fight to preserve our environment. What would happen, ladies and gentlemen, if we do not apply this model? If we just fight and pressure only governments and companies? We have an example which is not too far from us, and that is the organization known as Ultima Generazione, last generation. This movement actually, as its primary role, attacks art in all its forms of expression and places of government in order to protest against climate change. But in society, last generation, Ultima Generazione in its original name, is viewed as something far from our reality. It is thought as some radicals who do not understand the situation, who just block streets and roads, block traffic, and overall they create danger. And why is that? Why do people believe that a movement that fights for protection of the environment is far from our reality? Because Ultima Generazione doesn't educate people. It just pressures and attacks places of governments. Yes, please.
So do you think that a traffic jam is far more dangerous than the environmental crisis that we're living now?
Absolutely not. That is our point. Without educating people and just demonstrating, there is no actual way in changing our world. With our model, we actually go against the status quo in which, as we will explain later, nothing is changing fast as it should to preserve our environment. We need to create this social, environmental class consciousness to better preserve our world. It is necessary to understand what we want, to better protest. We are not against protest, we're in favor, but protesting is done when people understand what they want. People know what their goal is, and our goal is to preserve the environment through, I'll say it again last time, environmental class consciousness. I finished my speech. Thank you all for your attention.
2 seconds.
Possiamo chiedere un secondo un telefono dalla professoressa per tenere il tempo che abbiamo fatto con l'orologio fino adesso? Grazie. Va bene anche uno dei nostri però. Thank you.
Ready? Okay. Cameras on speaker. Please, careful.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. No education on a burning planet. Good morning to everyone. I'm Carlo Cirillo, and I am the first speaker of the opposition team. I will start by stating the motion. Environmental movements should focus more on educating people rather than pressuring government. Now, our speech will start by giving you the key word and the definition that everybody in this room is going to need to have a fully and complete understanding on what is going on this side of the room. So, let's start with environmentalists, which is an organization who is concerned about and wants to improve or protect the environment. And then we are going to give you also the definition of education, system of training, and it is a system of training designed to give knowledge and develop skills. Both of these definitions are from the Oxford Dictionary. Now, I will start by rebutting some interesting point that the first speaker of the proposal team has said. They have told us about how much they hate indifference. And I'm glad to say that we agree on that. We want to bravely fight that indifference. However, the first speaker has also said that nothing is changing fast enough. And that is another point that we have in common. We want to take the struggle to next level. We want to act now in order to save our planet and the planet of the future generation. It is our responsibility to do so. So, what they have told us is that nothing is changing fast enough. Yet, they are supporting and educating models, which of course will take generation in order to see results. Because as a known fact, older generation, those generation who are no longer in school, which was the primary focus of their model, how are they going to be educated? And also, where are we going to find the specialists to talk about these issues? Who is going to teach our new generation about this huge problematic that affects all of us? They have made that clear yet, and they also have failed to let us understand where are they going to take the funding for all these projects. Are teachers going to do that? Is this going to be something that the state will do or something that the private will do? And also, they haven't shown us up to now any proof of how this will be effective in time for 2030. Because that is, according to science community, the no turning back point. The point where it's going to be too late to take any action. And as we have been saying, we need strong, bold movements which are going to affect and sound throughout every network page and sound throughout the heart of every people in order to make everybody understand what is the stake here. Yes, thank you.
How does preferring manifestation, a direct manifestation of education, help this organization expand and get to know to more people? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I'm glad that this question came up because it is going to be my point. Because I am going to talk about why policy and manifestation are much more effective rather than the door closed meeting inside the school or a university. My second speaker here, Michele Helago, is going to tell you about why it is crucial that now we take our responsibility that previous generation has failed to take, and why we need to stroke at the heart of companies who have the power to make these changes that we need. And I'm sure that by the time my third speaker, Nicola Pascale, will have finished his speech, everybody in this room will have this awareness that the other team has been talking about, even if nobody here had these teaching methods that they have been preaching about. But now, let's go back to my point. Why we need to put pressure in the government. They have told us about a lot of how changing the upper class, the politician, is going to help us all. Well, besides all the counter argumentation that I have said before in my speech about the timing and their methods who are still unclear, we can also say that if we are able to mobilize mass, and if we are able to keep pressuring governments worldwide to fall under what is right, to do the right things. Yes, thank you very much.
How do you manifest with a lot of people if you do not educate them on what you are protesting for? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now today we have reached a point where many people, a vast majority of people, at very least in the Western society, are aware of this. Now, of course, we can improve that data. And the way we improve it is to take part in everybody's life, is to take into our struggle every people, whether or not they are in school. And how we do that? Thanks to social media and thanks to these bold movements, everybody can be aware of how this happens, and they can do it without having to prefer their model to what we believe is right. Because taking action is the fastest way to make change. A policy is something that the government can make. It is something that is way faster, way more effective, because people, whether they want or not, they are supposed and they will have to follow the law. That is why we want to do that. That is why we want to keep up the heat against the government and the institutions that sadly are made mostly of men and women of previous generation. Therefore, they yet do not have a fully understanding of the state up here. And also, older generation are harder to educate because they're no longer in school, because maybe they are not skilled on the new devices that we have to share our knowledge. Therefore, making a policy or pressuring the governments to making a policy, it is the fastest way to make this change. Because if we now keep pushing, keep doing bold movements as activists all around the world are doing now, we can be that change that this planet needs. So there is no education on a burning planet. Thank you very much for your time. That's the end of my speech.
7 and 53. Okay. Well, right, please.
Ele, thank you.
Please.
Ele,
Ele, please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, good morning to everyone. I'm Ele and I'm second speaker for Precision Team. I would like to start by explaining why and how we should follow our model that our first speaker just explained. So, why? Why? Because it benefits the environment, movements, and citizens. And this has, as a consequence, the fact that it benefits the environment. Why? Why is that? Because educated people are aware and they would vote for better people that represent them. And these people that are educated, such as them, are conscious on what to do, would make better choices, which is a thing that would have a major impact. So how we would do that? Would make awareness by with meetups, places, with manifestations in schools, universities, workplaces, which is something that is more accessible, because people, even if they don't have social media, as the opposition team was talking about, even if they don't have social media, they surely have a social life. So if they go to school, they will be exposed to this. So even if they're not aware, they will somehow know something, and they will gain knowledge, which is something that is really important for our society, and it's really important if we want to make a bigger change, because something that we should really value is the butterfly effect that we'll explain later. But why is it so much important? Because as the butterfly effect or the dominance effect, yes.
You said that even people that don't have social media can learn about this in the manifestation and in public gathering. So are you saying that education is a product of manifestation?
No, it's education could be manifested. So it's a way to make it accessible for everyone. Because if you don't have social media, if you don't know how to use social media, you will surely go to school. You will surely go to work. You will surely go, to meet up places. So you will be exposed to other people. It could be something that people talk about. So if you meet up with your friends, with your coworkers. If you hear that you're talking about the environment and why should you do that, why should you act, how should you act, you will be more conscious. It's a way more effective. So. Something that we should make clear is that companies are started by entrepreneurs, which are in the first place citizens. So if we don't act upon our model that our first speaker explained, we will encourage a really huge problem in the status quo, which is greenwashing. I will explain it in just a few words. Greenwashing is a term that indicates activities that get presented as sustainable, even though they are finalized to make profit. So it's really important to be aware of this and to know how to act when we have this problem. So making people aware would make them able to recognize when greenwashing is present, and they will know what to do. So if we educate citizens, that could be also entrepreneurs and people that act in the society, that are an active part of this society, we will make clear to them what is the final goal of the legislations that are proposed. And in this way, they would understand and they would have a reason to act according to the preservation of the environment. So if they understand why we are doing all of that, if they understand that the planet would not be here if they don't act, they would be motivated. They would have a reason to do it, because they could be sensibilized, because they could say, well, if my future children, if my family would not have this planet, it's a reason, they have another reason to act and start being more conscious. So this is really important, and as I was saying before, the butterfly effect, why should even a single citizen act? Because even a single citizen, even a single person can make a difference. So as the ESET quotes, 1,088 kilowatts in Italy per citizens are consumed. So if a single person, if a single citizen can make this great consume, if they become more aware, we could make this data lessen. We lessen this, and this would have a major impact on the environment, because if every single citizen acts and does the bare minimum, if every single person does this, we would have a major impact. And people could say, why wouldn't only some people act? This is really important because we should sensibilize, firstly, as the opposition team was saying, the Western countries, because the UK, the USA, China, India, Russia account for 62.4% of global emissions, according by UN-sponsored agencies. So we should aim to sensibilize these people firstly, obviously, because they would have a major impact. And this is really important because people are part of the society. And if we educate, as I was saying before, a citizen, that could be an entrepreneur. And this person would start a company and will act in this company in an effective way. They would be aware of the legislations. Why would I do this? How would I do this? And if you are educated, if you have been educated in the past, you will understand the importance of this. Because obviously companies are just the peak of the iceberg. We, as a society, represent the whole iceberg. And we should not say, oh yeah, only big companies could do that because we are just people. What can we do in our everyday life? This could be wrong, because if single person, should start, if I'm aware, I know that in my everyday life I can make choices that are responsible, that would make life easier for our future generations. This is really important. And as our first speaker explained, this is why we should create consciousness. We should encourage environmental class consciousness. It is something that in our status quo is not that much present, but according to our model, we should encourage this. And with that being said, I thank you all for listening, and I will end my speech.
8 minutes. Ready?
Mhm.
Second speaker, the opposition team, please.
So my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody. I'm Michele Ferrago, second speaker of the opposition team. For sure, education is an important aspect in nowadays life. Even though there can't be education on a burning planet, so we see that it's quite difficult to appreciate what your argumentative line of the proposition team, because as they also stated, it's important to have an active role in our society and with the environmental movements, but it's too late for education, because also as my first speaker, Carlo Trillo, said before, into 2030 there is a point of non-return, and we can't just wait as proposed by model of the proposition team to wait from some people that will be environmentally educated towards some person, towards some political that maybe they will try to stop this problem. To answer to the crisis, to this crisis, to answer to climate change is not just education of some people in some small room without taking consideration what really matters nowadays, what really counts when talking about climate change. What we want to do to stop this destruction of our planet is not to educate people, but is to act, is to interact in a more appropriate way. And we can surely do this by pressuring governments and companies. But before moving on these points, I would like to start by confuting all the argumentative line of the proposition team.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. I would like to ask, with saying that, are you implying that education isn't a form of direct acting? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Education may be considered a form of direct active, but when you consider to educate a generation, you need a lot of time. I already stated that by 2030, there is a point of non-return for the climate change. Are 7 years where we need to have solutions, not just to have some people that can understand there is a problem now. Education now will make people to understand the problem. Pressuring companies and pressuring governments will take people to have a solution in 7 years. And this is what we are aiming for, solutions before it's too late. Because creating consciousness, as said by the model of the proposition team, it's not good now because it needs too much time for us. Moreover, it has been stated by the proposition team that as the education increases, there will be more and more people that want to vote in favor of the environmental movements. But in the last decade, education has increased higher than before. But with the Easter data, we can see that in 2022, Italy, in their election, under 55 is the majority that didn't vote at the election. And so, where is the education? What is the power of education if the majority of people that have already got an environment or a sort of an environmental education didn't vote? Yes.
Isn't not voting an example of how we need education? Thank you.
Yeah, of course it isn't, because I would already assume education is already increasing. Everyone is already going for an educational system, and you're seeing as these are not good results. We have tried with education, and the majority of 155 didn't vote. So this is a problem. And how we can deal with this problem? Of course, we have to change if we want real solution. How we can change? Considering the pressure on companies. Why pressuring companies is important? It's important because what we want us as an opposition team is to preserve our planet, is to respect the biodiversity, to respect the climate, to respect everything, also the future generation, as the philosopher Jonas said. Let there be humanity. It's fundamental for us to move in a direction that can preserve not only ourselves today, but can preserve our future generation, our children's, but also the world where they will live. And it's for this reason that I want to ensure the importance to pressure companies. And how highly important is this can be demonstrated by three main points. First of all, pressuring companies can change the production of companies itself, which is one of the biggest solutions that we can have to this problem. Because, making also a normal example, if we have many companies that are producing nowadays water bottle plastic that can be used only once, this is a lot of polluting. This is a lot of problems for our world. But if we pressure all the companies that are producing non-recyclable plastic bottles for water to start producing reusable aluminum bottles, now the level of pollution made by these companies will have a huge reduction. Yes.
Isn't changing companies that make greenwashing a consequence of pressuring? Thank you.
Of course, this is the point. This decreasing pollution is a consequence not of an education, but is a consequence of the pressuring on companies. In fact, not only how pressuring companies can influence the production of the industries, and so the consumers that will be obliged to get this non-polluting product. But a consequence of pressuring is also education. Why? Because companies are made up of a huge amount of individuals. Because now we're not considering some small companies. We are considering multinational companies to have solutions. And pressuring these multinational companies that have a huge numbers of individuals means pressuring not only the companies and their production, but also the individuals, that they need to respect what the company says, and so they will be influenced and they will be start to act to prevent this climate change. So it's for this reason that it's fundamental not to get the best pressure on companies, and not only to educate some smaller group of people, because with a great pressure on companies and governments, we can really talk about a salvation for the future generation and for our planet, because we of the opposition team we definitely don't want a burning planet. And this is the end of my speech.
Ready?
Ready. Yes, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The first and the second speaker of our adversaries, the opposition teams, both started their speech with a small sentence: education on a burning planet. But, ladies and gentlemen, there is something else which is burning in our society that makes a really nasty smell, which is class consciousness. We can't solve environment issues without educating citizens if class consciousness is being loosened in our society. I will now proceed with rebuttaling and with the deconstruction of the argument presented by the opposition team, doing what is expected from my role. I'm Fabrizia Trapella. I'm the third speaker of the proposition team of the motion for today. I shall now start in chronological order to better understand what is the common threads that unifies all the rebuttals our team has made, starting with the first argument. It started saying that our team and his both converge on a single statement that we both hate indifference. Yes, but how if you're not educating the base of our society? How can you reduce indifference? Indifference is something which starts, as the Latins would say, abovo, to the beginning of our society. And so it's the situation nowadays. And as my teammate Ile just said, if we only focus on the peak of the iceberg, we are ignoring what there is at the base. Citizens are the base of our society, and that is something I will repeat continually in my speech, because he also said that our project, the project of educating people presented in our model, will present a problem, because there are people which are older, which they are not in school anymore. But let's make an example more on the status quo. The Greta Thunberg movement. She is a little girl who educates everyone. students, but also older people that listens to her speech and take inspirations from her. So education can be in all forms. We are supporting education, as Ele already said, in all its forms, not only on social media or television channels or speeches, in every form. And that's the difference from the status quo we are proposing to you today, because we are extending education to all the sectors we are available. Then, he said that people which are older cannot be educated because they are not in school, and it's more difficult to educate them. But if something is more difficult, we shouldn't do it. And it's something, yes, it can be tricky sometimes, but I will remind you that citizens elect the government. And that's why we should educate citizens, because they can make a better difference to elect better representations and politicians to solve climate change, because they actually empower to do that. And then he said, where do you get funds? There are two main points I want to make to that assertion, because I can do the same question. To talk to governments, you need educated people in that sector. But I don't want to make that specific question, because we can simply say another thing. Environmental movements don't necessarily need money. That's the main thing that the adversaries ignored, because there exist non-profit organizations, and they are important. They can make a really big difference if we follow our model, which is based, being different from the status quo, by generating a lot of examples of education and not focusing only on a single sector. Then, proceeding with my rebuttals, the second speaker said a statement that we need to have an active role in our society in order to change this big issue nowadays, that is climate change. But I want to get your focus on three words of his statement. In our society again is based on citizens which vote. So it will be like a pyramid, because if we influence the base of the pyramid, citizens who vote, they elect better politicians.
Question.
Yes, please.
How can you make this possible by 2050?
Yes, thank you. By increasing education. Because, as we said before, we want to extend education in all its forms and not focusing only on a simple aspect. And then we provided you answers about why, and why we should educate citizens first. Because pressuring governments may seem faster, but it isn't. Because then LA talked about the greenwashing movement. The greenwashing movement that is a wrong answer to pressuring the government. And so it's not as fast as the adversaries are saying as a solution. But I will say about that more later, because then he said also that education is something you need time for, and pressuring is fast. But again, pressuring is fast based on what? Because pressuring leaded governments and more specifically companies to have a worse reaction to these big issues. We want to make this problem worse. That's the question I'm asking to the opposition team. Yes, please.
So if this pressuring makes things worse, how comes that we have more recycling coming up now than before all this pressuring started?
Yes, I shall provide you with an example that was already being quoted by Amy. That was the greenwashing movement. Greenwashing is a term that indicates activities which get presented as sustainable, but they are actually meant to make profit from the companies, and it's a response to all those movements that pressures the government. greenwashing is a plug to our society, and so it's a worse answer for climate change due to pressuring the government. Yes, it is a faster solution, but it's a worse solution. And then I want to conclude my speech by saying that we need to focus on the basis of the iceberg and not only to the peak of the iceberg, as the opposition team is doing. We have to get a global vision of our society, because I repeat that again, society is based by citizens, and citizens need to have, as we already say a lot of times, environmental class consciousness. Thank you. I will now end my speech.
Okay. Okay.
And now starting 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nicola Pascale, and I'm the third speaker for the opposition team. I'd like to start my speech by asking you all a question. Why do we all know about Greta Thunberg? Because she started that by trying to take direct action. The proposition team right now are ignoring that education comes from the direct action, because direct action leads to education. They try to tell us in their model that this education that they are presenting will happen where people talk. But what is better to make people talk than some people trying to get to a company and bring it to its knees to change the world and make it a better place? People talk about stuff like this because it creates uproar. That's the biggest thing about their chain reaction that they so dearly started to talk about in their first speeches. Because also speaking about their model, their third speaker tried to address the funds question, talking about non-profit organizations. Non-profit organizations do not mean that they don't need money. Money is needed to do anything in the world we live in, and that's just a standard fact. Even if you wanted to educate a lot of people in a room, for example, or yes?
So that means that to protest and take other direct actions rather than educating, you also need money. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Sorry to answer it with another questions, but do you need money to get out of your house and stand into the middle of the city in front of the government building and start screaming? I can do it right now if I want to, without any money on my person, and that's just a fact of the matter. And not only is it basically free, it's also much more effective, not in the short term, because even if in your model people who are more educated start to vote for better people, and those better people vote for better people, that's just not fast enough. In the best case scenario, it takes at least 2 cycles of the government to start doing that. And that is just too much time, bureaucracy, as it is, it's a very slow thing. It is very slow moving. So to save the world in the best way, we need to take direct action, and we need to bring it to the people who can make a change. Now, the second speaker of the proposition team talked about greenwashing, and the third speaker presented it as the answer to pressuring of companies by our environmentalist organizations. We do not think that is correct. That's not an answer to pressuring. That is just greedy companies who don't care about the environment and don't care about the people that live on this earth, that try to take advantage of everybody. And even if...
Eli,
Yes.
thank you. I wanted to ask, if you think that companies are greedy and so they are not educated enough, don't you think we should educate citizens, which comprehends also entrepreneurs? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The fact of the matter is that companies are well educated. They're too educated. They know how to take advantage of people. So bringing more education to everybody is not the best answer to this. They will not stop to try to take advantage, to make some profit, because that is what they do. They are greedy. They just want money on their table.
Right.
Yes.
Would they stop doing this by pressuring them?
Thank you for your question. Yes. That is the main thing. If people get together, governments can fall. There are revolutions that happened. And that is the main reason that we know that it is possible. The fact of the matter is that people, when they get together, are more powerful than any single entity, and that is why the pressuring will work better than the educating. Because even if not only is there is the problem of trying to educate everyone, have you ever met another person that has new opinions? The old people that are in the government and take decisions do not want to be educated, and you can't force someone who doesn't want their opinion to be changed to change their opinion just by educating them. Old people have old mentalities, and the values that have been brought into them are so deeply ingrained in their brains that just by trying to speak about the environment and educate people, that will not work. And that will never work. Because in the world we live in, the only way to have meaningful change in the good timing, in the short time, it is to take direct action. We cannot educate people if the world is on fire around us. Thank you for your time.
Ready? Okay, so last speaker from opposition team. Harry.
I was from a speech in 3, 2, 1. No. Well, good morning again, everyone. I'm Steve Carlos Villa. Now I will give you the last speech for my team. Now we have been hearing lots of words, lots of ideas, lots of proposition, and my job here now is to help you not navigate this ocean of information that you're diving into. My job here now is to help you climb the iceberg that the opposite team has been building up from the beginning of this debate. So we're going to analyze the point of clash of this debate. The first one that, of course, everybody would have clearly saw is when to take action. The timing here is crucial. We have been putting lots of pressure on the time, but why is that? Because as my second and third speaker have said, it's our responsibility, not as new generation, because this is not something that only applies to us. It is something that applies to everybody, because we all live in this world, and we have made that very clear. On the other hand, the proposal team has given us a very confused way on how that will happen. They first said it will be in school, then they said that it is going to be also on gathering place. They didn't say at the beginning who was going to giving this lesson. Then they said that there are organizations that could give them. Well, we on the other hand have been very clear on how we want to act and when. We want to act now. We want to act with all the people that can hear this news, to all the people that can hear the sound of our word. And now, this is an important part because this can link to our next point of clash. Is this working? The proposal team has been a huge critic of the status quo. And we have been showing you evidence on how that is working. Thanks to the proposition team, we started talking about Greta Thunberg, which was the first, as we have said, real activist. And she has spread her word and her ideals, and now millions of people and of individuals take part in, not doing some talk at some university or some school. She did that by fighting. She did that by protesting. And that is something that my third speaker has plainly said. And we've proven to you why protesting is the most effective way, and also why education, so people being aware, that is the key word that we both have said many times, it is crucial and it is a direct consequences of people taking action, of people making the right choice, people taking the right choice that make other person all around us, all the community gather around wanting to do what's right. And also, my third speaker has brilliantly said at the end of his speech that company wants money. Of course, that has been another point of clash. How can we force without education? And the question that we have brought up to you is, are we polluting more now? Are we less eco-friendly now than we were 10 or 20 years ago? Of course not. Because our pressuring against corporation, our pressuring against government, as we have said, has made these radical changes. That yes, they can be improved, but in our fast-track way, we can do it by 2030. And nobody else in this room has given us another way to do that by 2030. So please, bear with me when I say no education in a blooming planet. Thank you very much for your time.
Ready?
Okay.
last speaker of all the day. Please, National.
Thank you. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We don't need to climb the iceberg. It's already melting, and you're helping it. Well, what would happen in the opposition world? They would live in a world with no education. They said it countless times. No education on a burning planet. And let's hear it again. No education. They are undermining the principle of our society. Education. No education on a burning planet. Just protesting. How do you do it? You protest. No, again, last time as well. No education. That it's clear. They do not care about educating people, and they do not care about people being aware. Wait a second. Maybe they do. We need people to be aware. That's incoherence right there. Education, is education direct acting? Yes, it may be. Education is not enough. Incoherence, right there, again. Isn't pressuring companies making greenwashing worse? And we explained what greenwashing was. Yes, that's incoherence, right there, again. In our world, we have environmental class consciousness. We live in a world where people are educated. They know what the problem is, and they can start changing it for the better. We live in a world where environmental class consciousness leads to better people working for the government. We live in a world where environmental class consciousness achieved through education of any sort brings about a better world. Again, I'll have to say it. Opposition team countless times agreed with us. They agreed that we need to be aware. They agreed that we need to be aware, so we need education. But what? We're incoherent. They're incoherent. Then we talk in our model, which actually persists in our society. We have brought up evidence on how not applying our model is actually making things worse. Just like Ultima Generazione. We talked about the butterfly effect. One educated person can educate anyone else. We talked about greenwashing is caused by pressuring companies and not educating people. Again, no education on a burning planet. Again, I'll say it again. We want education and we want environmental class consciousness. We don't need to climb the iceberg. It's already melting and you're helping it. Thank you for your attention.
Ready?